Okay, welcome back. This is chapter 14, part 7 on Michelangelo. It is broken down into two separate lectures. Michelangelo. Giorgio Vasari, a painter, is best known for his Lives of the Artists, contemporary biography of the important Renaissance artists, many of whom he knew. He introduced his chapter on Michelangelo Buonarroti with a description that seems more like the birth of a god than a man. The great ruler of heaven looked down, and seeing these vain and fruitless efforts, and these presumptuous opinion of man, more removed from truth, and than light from darkness resolved, in order to rid him of these errors, sent to earth a genius universal in each art, to show single-handed the perfection of line and shadow, and who should give relief to his painting, show a sound judgment in sculpture and in architecture. He further endowed him with the true moral philosophy and sweet poetic spirit, so that the world should marvel at the singular eminence of his life and works and all his actions, seeming rather divine than earthly. Michelangelo was a child prodigy. As a young man, it was said that no pose was too difficult for him to draw. Despite his great talent, his family, who believed they had noble roots, considered his vocation an embarrassment, and was regularly beaten by his father and brothers. Apprenticed around the age of 13, he attracted the attention of the ruler of Florence, Lorenzo de' Medici, who arranged for Michelangelo to study sculpture in the private academy on the grounds of the Medici Palace. When he was only 23 years old, he was hired by a cardinal to sculpt the Pietà for the church in Rome. The Pietà is a scene that was popular during the Renaissance, and although a religious scene, it is never found in the scriptures. The marvelous but melancholy Pietà shows the dead body of Christ after having been removed from the cross, lying across his mother's lap. Mary is sad but dignified, the gesture of her left hand signifying acceptance. The unusual proportions, he is smaller than she, remind us that no matter what the age of Jesus at his death, we are looking at a mother whose child has died. As in Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, imaginative distortion increases his art's power. So, what can I tell you this? At age 23, he sculpts this. Unbelievable. No one today, regardless of the technology that we have, could possibly sculpt this out of a single piece of marble. And his rudimentary tools were basically a chisel and a hammer. Basically, that's what he had. He also had files and some very rudimentary early sandpaper. He does this work, and the anatomy is astounding. There's so many places where it's just breathtaking. If I can point out one area, it's this right here, where the fingers of Mary press into and lift up the dead Christ. Absolutely amazing. The musculature under the armpit that is being pushed up by the hand of Mary. Absolutely stunning. The composition is sad, and it does droop in these curves all the way down to the floor. Right here. After making this sculpture and then unveiling it, many questioned whether Michelangelo, a 23-year-old, could possibly have sculpted this. This angered him, and he went back and in the stand, the marble stand that this is on, he then carved his name, Michelangelo, in very large letters to let everybody know that he did in fact do this. Now, Michelangelo was another Renaissance man who was very talented in many fields, but I must say he is most talented as a sculptor. After his success in Rome, Michelangelo returned home to Florence to work on an 18-foot block of marble that had been prepared for Donatello but left unused for decades. When Michelangelo transformed the enormous stone into the finished statue of David, the City fathers decided to put it in Palazzo Vecchio, the main square, as the symbol of Florence. The statue shows David before he kills Goliath. David is tense but confident, sling across his shoulder, his right hand loosely fingering the stone. His eyes stare intensely as if he is choosing the right moment for his attack. Unlike Donatello's version, this David is not a child, but a powerful young man, a worthy symbol of the youthful vitality of Florence. When Michelangelo was 30 years old, Pope Julius II summoned him to Rome for his first papal commission, sculpting the Pope's tomb. With youthful enthusiasm, Michelangelo drew up a design for an enormous tomb with 40 bigger-than-life statues. He left Florence for the marble quarries of Carrara. He spent several months picking out the marble because of his singular vision of the sculptural process. Michelangelo believed that if chosen properly, his sculpture was already alive in the block of stone. He needed only to remove the excess to release the figure within. Michelangelo returned from his months in the quarries and filled half of St. Peter's Square with 100 tons of his stone. However, the Pope was no longer interested in the tomb. He did not tell Michelangelo, but he decided to tear down the old St. Peter's, the most venerated building in the Christian world, and replace it with a new one, a massive undertaking. Michelangelo was furious and told Julius II, known as the Terrible Pope for his temper, he was leaving Rome, and he would never have any dealings with him again. Rather than hunting down Michelangelo and executing him, as might have been expected, emissaries of the Pope began negotiations through the leaders of Florence for Michelangelo to return to Rome. The people had a new commission for Michelangelo to cover the ceiling of a tremendous chapel adjoining St. Peter's. The old ceiling had developed cracks. It was 5,800 square feet, blue covered with gold stars. Michelangelo was not interested in this new commission. First, he wanted to complete the project for the tomb he had spent so much time planning, and second, he told the Pope he was a sculptor, not a painter. This was not an overstatement. The artist had only completed one painting since his apprenticeship. He finally agreed to paint the ceiling after many heated discussions because the Pope promised he could finish the tomb afterward. What the sculptor created was the world-famous masterpiece, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Working on scaffolding 70 feet from the floor, it took Michelangelo about 4 years to complete the project. At first, eager to finish quickly and begin again on the tomb, he planned to paint only the corner spaces, making portraits of the 12 apostles in each of them. However, the word ambitious is hardly sufficient to describe what became his ultimate plan. Michelangelo decided to represent the history of the world before Moses, from the first events in Genesis, the separation of light from darkness, to the story of Noah. And that is the end of the first part of this lecture on Michelangelo.